So, funny story. The first year I worked at USA, I was 2 years out of college. And USA always has a big Christmas party, and I was like, and so like they announced the act for the Christmas party, and I was like, does anyone even know who Foreigner is?
It's your host, Allison Kneib.
And I'm John Thornton, the Franchise Skeptic. I evaluate franchises and pick out especially horrible ones, exposing them on this podcast.
All this and more on the Franchise Skeptic Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Franchise Skeptics Podcast. I am co-host Allison Kneib, and here is my other co-host,
John Thornton. How you doing today, Allison?
I am doing well. I am gearing up for this new school year. I homeschool my kids, and I've spent many hours with my spreadsheets and such because that's the kind of homeschool mom I am.
Awesome. My daughter is, like I mentioned in the earlier episode, she's in New York City, so she is joining a community college. She has officially become a New York State resident.
Nice, good for her.
I can't recall the name of it right now because obviously I'm just the worst father ever. However, the goal, of course, is to be in the Fashion Institute in New York, technology.
Nice,
in a
good
couple
for
of
her.
years.
That's awesome. My kids are much younger. My oldest is 14 and all the way down to age 8, and we are rocking and rolling on another homeschool year coming up and all that together.
Awesome. How's your husband's business going?
It's coming well. We are starting to build momentum and getting things going. As any of you who are listening knows, business does not happen overnight. I mean, when it does, it's like lightning striking, right? But,
Well, feel free to pitch it if you want to.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean, you have a podcast.
I appreciate that. So, if you're looking for business consulting, if you want to get your business started, or if you are looking for small business advertising, we are your people. We have lots of experience doing that, and please reach out and see how we can help you.
All right. Sounds great. That's why you're here, because as franchise skeptics, we do that same thing for franchises.
Right.
Want to make sure that people are getting into a situation in which they understand and can control as much as possible.
Exactly. And that you are set up with the tools for the best success for you.
So, like, for example, we have new reports this week.
Okay, tell me, what do we have?
On this one, we're focusing obviously on water remediation because we're going to be talking about a water remediation company on this podcast. So we talk about ServPro 911 Restoration, Service Master Restore, and Restoration One, as well as PuroClean, the subject of this podcast.
We are here to help you, so we offer consultations, we have our reports, we have our blog posts, we have lots of tools to give you what you need to be successful.
FranchiseSkeptics.com, John T at FranchiseSkeptics.com. Give us a call, give us an email. Looking forward to helping you.
Yep. Okay, so John, did we get an email this week?
Of course we did. Going on for 3 weeks now. People are responding. They're loving the podcast. Let's go ahead and get into this.
Okay, sounds good.
Alton, Kate from San Antonio writes, "Hi, a friend of mine has some convenience store franchises out west, and he is having health issues, so much so that he can only work 1 day a week. What would you recommend?" Kate, honestly, if I was in this situation and if I had an attorney, especially a franchise attorney, first thing I would do is get their advice ASAP. They will be able to give your friend the best legal, actionable advice. They will be able to understand the franchise agreement, and they will be able to give you the best advice within the confines of the law as well as the agreement. The franchisor you mentioned, Kate, they are very large and experienced, and I guarantee your friend is not the first one to have serious health issues while operating this franchise. They will have experience and policy in place to handle this, but they will handle it in their favor. So that, again, is why I strongly recommend that you discuss this with an attorney or a franchise attorney before you start disclosing the situation to the franchisor.
Good advice, John. All right, John. So Lisa from South Florida wrote in, "I just found your show and absolutely love what you're doing. My brother bought a pet mobile grooming franchise and it has been a pain in the ass. He works constantly, is always in a bad mood, and their money situation is bad. Can you do an episode on pet mobile grooming franchise?" So I'm not going to discuss which pet mobile grooming franchise it is in the interest of keeping confidentiality.
Exactly. No
disclosure. But we will definitely look into it and put it on our short list for season number 2. And then don't forget to listen to our episode about Fetch. That'll have some other general information about that type of franchise. So, John, didn't you go to the San Antonio Franchise Show this weekend?
I did, Allison. The show was a group of franchisors and franchisor and franchisee support companies gathered together effectively to pitch their products. Largely, it was a group of consumer-oriented franchises. There were 3 CBD franchises, a few restaurant chains, etc. But the largest group of vendors were those who did franchise support systems.
Interesting.
CPAs. Yeah, CPAs, bookkeepers, franchise lawyers, people who would help, quote, help you get financing. There are also a couple of franchise consultants, effectively salespeople who put you through the franchise sales process. And Allison, there are 2 key takeaways that I got from this.
Okay, I can't wait to hear.
Number 1, never ever forget that franchises are sold.
Mm-hmm.
The entire show was nothing but a sales pitch for you to spend your money or go into debt to help a company outlay their capital build out on your dime. That's what the entire show was about. For this podcast, I was reminded about something that I don't think that we mentioned about item 7 in our podcasts. It doesn't include payroll expenses.
Yeah.
So, I attended a seminar and one of the attorneys mentioned this fact, and I immediately thought, OMG, oh my God, we didn't mention this at all. And that is completely embarrassed at this oversight because after all, the fact that item 7 does include payroll expenses is very material.
Yeah.
So when we listen to our podcast, remember, none of these expenses include payroll expenses, what you're going to pay your employees. Do you need 7 employees, 3 employees to start out? You need to add that money to the item 7 initial investment cost as well. So there were some oddballs there. Me, for example, I actually met the guy who organized the show and I handed him one of my cards and he says, Franchise Skeptics? And I said, yeah, we're business analysts, and that's kind of our, it's kind of our pitch. And he's like, oh, okay. I think he was skeptical about us. Another booth had 2 guys just selling hand massagers and they were hard pitching them, oh, $299, but I'll give it to you for $149 if you buy it. It's just like, okay. They weren't selling the hand massage franchise. They were just selling the massagers.
Interesting.
One company rented 2 booths and had about 7 people to talk up their coffee machines where you, quote, avoid having the hassle of starting a full restaurant, end quote, and can sell Starbucks coffee and gross you, and this is a quote, 5 machines can earn $50,000. 10 machines earn you $100,000.
All right. Interesting.
Does it say anything about where you're going to put the machines?
Yeah. You just keep them in your kitchen, right, John?
So.
Yeah. And to know, I had planned on attending as well, but I've been dealing with a migraine, so I wasn't able to attend.
So sorry to hear that.
But John, did you see anything which caught your skeptical eye?
Yeah, my most skeptical moment when I was with Minuteman Press. Now, the salesman was there. He was very nicely dressed, very professional, did a great job. They had an entire process of grabbing people from the crowd and pulling them towards this guy who was giving his never-ending spiel. I will say, as an ex-salesperson, the people at Minuteman Press definitely knew their stuff. So part of the process was this guy playing a video. So in time, a franchisee comes on, he starts talking up the Minuteman Press system. The salesperson paused the video and remarked, quote, this guy left a 6-figure job to meet with us, quote, to join with us. And so ding, 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 alarm bells pealing, sirens are screaming.
Red flag.
Exactly. I immediately grabbed my phone, Allison, and from our databases, I downloaded our copy of the Minuteman Press franchise disclosure document. And I quickly looked up the relevant figures. And let me run through them for a second.
Okay.
Initial investment, $150,000. Franchise term, 35 years. Now, in our PuroClean podcast, we mentioned that 20 years is an exceptionally long time. This one almost doubles it. Mm-hmm. So your median unit, $454,000 in earnings, royalties and advertising fees, about 8%, and your revenues left after royalties comes out at $418,000 on that median store.
Oh my gosh. Like I'm still reeling from the 35-year franchise term. That's insane. Yeah. Okay. So, but can you replace a 6-figure salary and earn a sufficient rate of return on that initial $150,000? I mean, with a 35-year investment?
Allison, if you took the $150,000, put it in the Dow Jones Industrial Average like we do for 35 years, added nothing to it, and had it grow at that 30-year average of 9.9% a year, In year 35, it would be worth $4,080,000.
Holy cow.
So to get that amount of money over 35 years, you would need to pull an average of $116,000 a year in profit every year for 35 years to equal $4,080,000, assuming you cannot sell your franchise.
Right.
Okay, so remember, after our royalties were taken, our median store now has $416,000 left, right?
Right.
So if you take out that $116,000 a year, you now have $302,000.
Right.
Well, remember, he has a six-figure salary to replace. That $116,000 is not his salary. He should not consider that his salary. That should be his profit, his rate of return on this investment. So let's say that his six-figure salary is exactly $100,000. Well, now you have $202,000 to run a Minuteman Press franchise, which needs to gross $454,000 in order to meet these numbers.
Right.
Can he do it?
Yeah, I mean, can he run a $454,000 grossing franchise when the franchisor takes out $40,000 and profit plus salary expectations? I mean, like require another $216,000 at least, right, for this franchise. So yeah, I'm pretty skeptical.
Yeah, you leave a six-figure job for this. You got to figure out, here's my salary expectations. I need to replace my salary. And since I'm investing money into this franchise, what is my rate of return? What am I getting on top of my salary? The two are not the same.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So I am quite skeptical. You and me.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you were able to attend that, John. It sounds like you got a lot of really cool information.
I did. I handed out a lot of cards too. So hopefully we're going to get a lot of podcast listeners out of it.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, everyone. Now back to our episode.
John, tell me, who are we talking about today?
So we're talking about PuroClean.
I have heard you talk about them before. You have some feelings about them.
I do. Now, PuroClean is based in Tamarack, Florida, just north of Fort Lauderdale somewhere. The issuance date for the franchise disclosure document, which we're getting this information out, is April 19th, 2022.
And if you have listened to us for any amount of time, you know that this information is not verified by a government agency. This is information provided to us from the actual business, but there is no entity actually going through and making sure what they give us is truthful, accurate, in the right format, any of that. There is nothing going through it, just us.
Just us.
Okay, so tell me, John, why PuroClean?
So PuroClean is how I got involved in this. I found out about their business model, and they were the first ones to which I actually downloaded the franchise disclosure document.
So that's how you dipped your toe into this.
That's how I dipped my toe into it. I was interested in this business, and
because you wanted to start one?
I just became interested in it for personal reasons, let's just say.
Okay.
And so I found out that these documents exist, and I said, well, I'm going to get one and just read the business model.
Just for fun, right?
Just for fun.
Normal Friday night.
I am that sort of person to do that. And what I read in this thing shocked me. It offended me.
Oh, okay.
I knew someone who had invested into this business, and that someone is still invested in this business, and that someone is struggling in this business because of what it is that I see. And that someone says, John, I really wish I had known you when I signed on to this thing.
So our goal is then obviously to plug what we do. Our goal is so that you are not in this situation wishing you had already heard about it. We are here to help you with this.
Exactly.
But back to our topic at hand. Tell me, what does PuroClean do?
All right, so I'm going to read from the franchise disclosure document. Okay. For those of you following along in the car, please don't read along with me. All right. So a PuroClean business provides drying, cleaning, painting, repair, mitigation, remediation, construction, and replacement services, and subcontract services to insurance companies, businesses, and residential clients, and others who have been subjected to fire, flood, vandalism, trauma, mold, and or other casualties.
Okay. I mean, that all sounds, that's a service needed, right?
That's right.
I mean, that exists for a purpose, and I know people who've had to use a service such as this.
Their effective business model is that you, as a franchisee, a flood happens, pipes break, you get called, you come in, you clean it, you got your big blowers, you got your vacuums, and then as a trusted PuroClean remediation expert, then you sell them on your ability to repair all that damage.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That is what this is saying. You can clean the stuff, and then
you can also help them rebuild, essentially.
The restoration. There's remediation, and then there's restoration.
Okay. As you're looking at a franchise, step one is this a needed service? I mean, essentially, this is a needed service. Okay. So then, assumably, they get a lot of insurance work or whatever.
They do. And you can get the insurance work, but you do have to do a lot of extra training.
Okay.
The training for the sort of business or certifications that you have to do can be expensive and extensive.
So that makes sense.
Just to start, just to start the franchise. But that doesn't qualify you for the insurance work. You have to go above and beyond.
Oh, I see.
So there's a level of certification that you need to run the franchise, and then a level of certification to which you need to do the insurance work.
And I would assume the vast majority of your work comes from insurance work. I mean, most people don't just do this going out on their own. So
I mean, I'm sure that some do. Yeah, as a general rule, you do want insurance contracts.
So you'll need that type of,
because
you'll need that additional training.
Yeah, because they're going to be a source of leads.
Right. So I see from our report then, just a side note, that you listeners should definitely check out our reports. Nudge, nudge. I see from our report that their main competitors are 1-800 Water Damage, ServPro, Restoration One, Service Master Restore.
Yeah.
That's who we have.
That's who you have.
Okay.
And Service Master is actually a pretty large company. They have janitorial services. They have these restoration companies. Others are more focused on this. But as you can tell, with the number of companies that do that, and I think you've probably heard of ServPro.
Yeah, I've heard of essentially all of these.
Yeah, ServPro's got ads currently running that I've seen on Hulu and other. Mm-hmm. These are big companies that do a lot of work. There is a market for that.
Right. And you know, where we live, John and I live, I mean, we're no stranger to acts of God, if you will.
We're no stranger to acts of God. But I'm going to tell you that if you're buying a PuroClean franchise, you're going to have a better chance of an act of God if you live next to the Mississippi River.
Well, yes, that makes sense.
Than if you do in dry-ass San Antonio, Texas.
Right. The problem with here is when it rains, it really, really rains, right?
Yes. But you have to wait quite a while. So.
Oh, yeah. Definitely does not do that every month. So then tell me, what do you have to do as the franchisee?
This is the first thing that worries me, is that the franchise term is 20 years.
Oh, man. That's the longest one that we've seen. I mean, the longest from ones that we've evaluated on this podcast. I should preface, we have seen lots and lots of franchises.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, I don't see very many that have 20-year terms.
Considering that especially a lot of franchise purchasers are probably later in their career life, that could easily mean you're doing this into your 70s.
Not only that, it's just hard to predict 20 years. Remember, this is an agreement.
I mean, think about all the people whose businesses shifted just in the last couple of years with all of the things going on, you know, around the world. Owning something for 20 years, having no idea what the landscape of our culture is going to look like in 20 years, or what technology is going to be available, or that's a long time.
You're in a global warming environment, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to rain more. It could just dry up.
That's true.
And sorry, PuroClean franchise. You have to deal with that. What you have to do is, if you're an individual, you must exclusively and directly supervise the franchise business for at least 40 hours of each business week.
So you are legitimately working 40 hours every week.
And you also must devote a full-time effort to directing outside sales. Or you can hire a outside salesperson.
You can pay someone else, okay.
This is a model that's very popular with couples.
Okay.
The man does the work, the wife goes and sells. Very common. I have the one person I know who does PuroClean.
That was there.
They're a couple. If you look at the PuroClean website and look at the various franchisers, you see a lot of man and wife operations.
Okay.
He's doing the work. She's doing the sales.
Okay.
Also says if you're a corporation or a partnership, one of the equity owners or partners must exclusively and directly supervise the franchise business on premises for at least 40 hours of each business week.
So you are literally working 40 hours. If you thought you were going to buy this and take a step back and let someone else do all this, sorry, no go.
No, you have to be directly involved in the PuroClean operation. Whether or not that means that you have to actually be sucking out the water, or if you're just managing it, that's one thing or another.
But it still says on its premises for at least 40 hours
40
out
hours
each
a
business
week. And then somebody else
So if you were hoping that when you turn 67, you were going to go down to 20 hours a week worth of work, this is not the franchise for you.
Probably not. Now, if something like that happens, you do talk to PuroClean. Maybe they'll come to an understanding. We're all humans here, but this is what the wording says.
But this is what you're signing. So they may say no.
Yeah, they may say no.
So tell me, what are the specific risks of this franchise? I mean, each franchise has its own little bits and pieces, but what's really risky about this one?
You're going to love this one.
Okay.
So mandatory minimum payments.
Okay.
Always have those.
Yeah.
They're going to be common on this one. Mm-hmm. Something new called rebates.
Oh, I'm unfamiliar with this and this terminology within a franchise. Okay.
Here's a nice one. Cross ownership of competing firms by top management.
Okay, that doesn't sound good. cross ownership, that's red flag. Other firms by top management, red flag.
So let's talk about this a little bit, because you don't see this very often.
Right.
Okay. If you look at the franchise disclosure document for PuroClean, item 1, and we're just going to scroll down there. Sorry for the mouse clicks, everybody.
252-page document.
252-page document. You got to scroll to page 10. Our predecessors and affiliates. We do not have any predecessors. Founded in 1972, our affiliate Signal USA, DBA, Signal Restoration Services, provides emergency and environmental property restoration services across all 50 states. Signal Restoration Services does operate company businesses through these offices that offer services to customers that are similar to PuroClean franchises, but do not do so under the PuroClean marks. Signal Restoration Services does not and has not offered franchise in this business or any other line of businesses.
Okay, so basically their parent company already owns
Well, there's an affiliate here.
Okay.
The affiliate competes against PuroClean franchisees.
Right. They don't franchise themselves, but they could in the future. It does say we might in the future, but we don't right now. But we offer the exact same services that your franchise offers.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so who owns this? Well, you go down to item 2 and you look at business experience. CEO, Chairman, and Director Mark Damitz, and Vice Chairman and Director Frank Torrey. Mr. Davis has been co-CEO of our Troy, Michigan-based affiliate, Signal Restoration Services, since 2012. Since 2008, Mr. Torrey has been the chairman and co-CEO of our Troy, Michigan-based affiliate, Signal Restoration Services, since 2012. If you go look at Signal Restoration Services website at signalrestoration.com/about, it says here, Signal Restoration is founded in 1972. Mark W. Davis and Frank Torrey purchased Signal in 2012. So the top 2 principals in PuroClean also own Signal Restoration,
right,
which is a direct competitor. Remember what I said about disclosing things in America?
Mm-hmm. As long as they disclose it, they can do whatever. I mean, once it's disclosed, it's your problem.
Yes. And I know of a situation where somebody became aware of this relationship because they did not read the franchise disclosure, and they got very upset.
Yeah.
But it's disclosed. The CEO, let me make sure I get that right. The CEO, Chairman, and Director, as well as the Vice Chairman and Director of PuroClean, own a direct competitor to PuroClean, and they don't care who gets that service contract because the money comes into their pocket regardless.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and assumably they get more money in their pocket if it's by the company they own versus the franchise that is servicing. I mean, we don't know that for sure. There's nothing that states that.
But they got their bases covered, don't they?
Yep, just in
it's
case.
It's one or the other, you know?
Just in case they're getting paid.
To that point, is that if you're going to disclose how you screw somebody, you can screw them all you want to.
Okay, so basically these guys are double dealing, right?
These guys are double dealing. That is correct. There is a conflict of interest here.
I was going to ask, isn't this a conflict of interest? I mean, I guess not because they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as long as they tell you.
As long as they tell you, there you go.
Okay. That sounds like a pretty big risk, but what are some of the other special risks?
I mentioned the 20-year agreement.
Yeah, ouch.
You don't know what's going to happen. That actually has an impact on your minimum monthly payment. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Also, inventory control. So you have to spend 2% of your gross revenues on PuroClean supplies.
Oh, wow. So after 20 years, you may end up with a large stockpile of PuroClean supplies?
Even if you don't need them, yes, you have to spend 2%. So,
even if theirs don't work the best, you have to spend... I mean, just pointing out
that's
the obvious.
Yes, yeah, you do have to buy their own cleaning supplies. Mm-hmm. So if you find a better product at a cheaper price, you have no choice, but you have to buy the PuroClean approved supplier products.
So then tell me, how much does the franchisee have to pay?
Well, PuroClean offers financing.
Okay.
The lowest amount that you can get, that you spend out of pocket, is $88,775.
All right, I mean, that's pretty standard, right?
If you paid fully out of pocket, didn't finance anything, you would spend $207,255.
Okay.
So effectively, that $88,000, you're financing $120,000 of your startup cost. It doesn't go away just because it's $88,000.
Right. You're just spreading out the payments.
You're spreading out the payments.
Like any other loan, right?
That's right. So if you have to finance a franchise because you literally don't have the money to just buy it, you may just want to think of other options in franchising. I just want to say. You still have to pay that $207,000 startup thing, even if you won't go $88,000 financing. And you have to pay the interest expense as well. So that just makes everything a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, and your interest rates may vary, right? There's nothing disclosing what their interest rates are for this, I'm assuming.
That depends upon
multiple factors.
They do put like contract information,
Okay.
but I don't go into that because the contracts just change.
That's true.
You
Good
know,
point.
I mean, they could put a Ford Motor agreement on here, but that's going to be from 2021, and it's July 2022, and
Who knows what?
it's a completely different agreement by
Good
now.
point.
So
Okay, so then what's the base franchise fee?
about $35,000.
Okay.
And remember, we talked about Fetch last week.
Right.
And their franchise fee was like 85%.
Oh.
This is much better. This is 26.5%.
Okay, so still on the high side.
On the high side, yes. Not like McDonald's, which I think we thought was 4%, 5% or so.
To reiterate, a franchise fee is just simply money you are handing them so that you can own. I mean, that doesn't mean they're handing you these tools. It's literally just the money you're handing them out of your initial investment.
No.
To have that name.
If you have to justify it to yourself so you don't feel so bad about it, just think of it as a licensing fee.
Okay.
Okay, you have the licensing fee to run a Fetch or a PuroClean operation.
So in this case, it's 26% of your initial investment.
26%, that's correct.
Just to have that license.
PuroClean, you have to buy a vehicle.
Okay. You're
So
required.
Vehicle is part of the marketing.
Okay.
So it's got to be wrapped. It's got to be branded. The vehicle itself is $1,000 a month or so. If you want to finance it, it's $60,000. If you want
Outright.
to just buy it offhand, you do have initial equipment and supplies package of $65,000. Renovation and rental for your PuroClean location.
Yeah.
You can do this from your home. You
Oh,
can
okay.
do
You're
this
allowed to
from
do it
a-
from your home?
You're allowed to do
Okay.
it from your home.
Because
You
it
can
said
do from a small
storefront
office.
again, so I wasn't sure.
Depending upon what you want to do, a lot of people, given that they have to buy stuff, will do this out of a small warehouse
That makes sense.
location.
Which assumably changes drastically depending if they're in LA versus San Antonio versus, I don't know, Boca Raton.
But I would not be surprised if some people's PuroClean franchises are run out of like mini storage houses.
That makes sense.
And so they have training, lots of training for PuroClean. You have to do initial training to run the business, to get the insurance business. You have to do additional training. It can be anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 for this
Wow.
training because you also have to pay for your own hotel, your own fees.
Oh, I see.
Your
So
own
it's not like
travel.
online. You're like
Not
actually going
online,
physically.
You're going over in your, because this is a physical business.
Right. So it's a big difference between.
Yes, to that point, and I'm glad you brought that up. You're not going to be sitting at a desk at a PuroClean. You're going to be sucking up water. You're going to be going down into the muck. If the person's basement's got a bunch of bleach and dog dew, that's what you're going to be
That's what
sucking
you just
up.
signed up for.
That's what you signed up for. So it's
Yeah.
a very physical business. They also expect you to have a working capital of about $15,000 to $25,000 for the first 3 months. Total on the low end, as I mentioned before, is $88,000 if you finance this. If you pay for everything in full and you get the deluxe package or whatever, the maximum they say the disclosed here is $231,655.
Okay. So then tell me about the financing. Is that something people may have available to them? I mean, I know we talked about financing.
You can always get financing via the Small Business Administration if you qualify. You can
Right.
always borrow money from your sister, etc. Most franchisors don't loan money, but some of them do.
Okay.
PuroClean does. So PuroClean offers financing, not specifically through themselves, but they do have approved financing vendors.
So they have a company. I mean, it's like going to a car dealership, right? They
Exactly,
tell you, well, we
exactly.
have these people that.
You got to go through Aztec Financial, and that's the name of PuroClean's.
Okay.
PuroClean. So it's Aztec Financial. You can do up to $120,000 of your $200,000 investment through financing the franchise fee as well as that starter package.
And it sounds really
and the
tempting,
van.
right? Like you only have to put down $80,000, but I mean, I have to imagine that monthly payment on that $120,000 loan is pretty high. I mean, if I'm
It's-
thinking of a mortgage payment, I have to assume the interest rates are going to be even higher on something like this. So it's
Yeah.
going to be hefty. Don't buy a job, and especially don't go into debt to buy a job.
Now we're going to start getting into the good stuff.
I know
about
the
this.
fees always give me like anxiety. Like I feel.
This one's definitely going to give you anxiety. And
Okay.
remember, this is a company in which the CEO and this number 2 guy own a competitor. This pretty much is not going to be nice. The royalty fee for PuroClean is tiered. It's based upon revenue. Starts at 10% for the first $250,000 of gross receipts, then slowly steps down to 3% for units with over $1.75 million in revenues.
Wow, that's a big jump from $250,000 to $1.75 million to get down to that 3% rate.
There is. Marketing and advertising, there's a 4% fee
Okay,
based
so-
upon your gross revenue.
I feel like we don't often see it as percentages. We often see it as a blanket fee. So now advertising is now a percentage.
Advertising is usually a percentage.
Oh, okay.
It's just it depends.
take that part
It
out.
depends upon how greedy and how they want to make sure
Yeah.
that this is. For smaller companies like Fetch, remember, I think they had that $1,500 a month and then 1.5%.
That's true.
They like having that block.
Guaranteed amount.
So that they know that they can spend that money.
That's
because
true.
if you're not generating that 1.5%, then you're putting $15 into the advertising fund.
Good
and
point.
they can't do anything about that. Then there's a technology fee. One of those technology fees where you get to connect that to their systems to make sure that they get paid.
Right.
So theirs is $500 a month.
Oh.
$120,000 over 20 years.
Ouch. Okay.
Remember how we talked about obfuscation and how this document is meant to hide things. We're going to look at this technology fee that you asked about.
Okay.
Page 22, item 7, it says insurance industry claims estimating software, $375. See note 13. Okay?
So I like to equate these documents essentially feel like your very own scavenger hunt. You get to go to one line item for them to tell you to go see another line item for them to go tell you to look at another chart, cell X to go see another one. So you get to play this really fun game. So if that is one thing that you enjoy, you should definitely take up this as a hobby.
That's right. Word problems. Word problems. Just like in high school math. All this is word problems. We have this line item in item 7. Remember, item 7 is just that big old table of initial investments that says insurance industry claims estimating software, $375 as incurred first 3 months. See note 13.
Which is also Dash Software 12.
See note 12. Note that is $3,000 a month as incurred first 3 months. We're just going to focus on the insurance industry claims software right now, but this can be applicable to a number of the other fees. Item 13 says you will be required to purchase and utilize the software. You read through here. The cost of the software is approximately $125 a month for each user license you obtain. The estimate in the table above represents the cost to license the software for an initial period of 3 months. Run the numbers.
Okay.
It's not a one-time $375 fee.
So it's not as it appears at first glance, right? It's $125 a month commitment to who?
To a third party.
So then now...
Run the numbers like a skeptic.
Okay, so $125 times 20 years times 12 months a year, let's see, about $30,000.
Good job.
Thanks.
Good job.
My
Isn't
mental
that
math
cool?
my mental math is really good, especially when it's spelled out for me.
Isn't that cool? You got a $30,000 commitment hidden inside a $375 reference on a chart plus a footy. Good going, PuroClean.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That is
That's A plus.
A plus
obfuscating
obfuscation.
Yeah.
A plus hiding. Congratulations, PuroClean. $30,000 right there. I don't even want to look at that Dash software. It's just going to depress me. I just don't even want to look at it.
Okay. So again, to reiterate, there's another software on there. They say as needed, but essentially needed, so that you can run your business, which is even higher. My head is spinning. That's a lot of fees. And like I said at the beginning, fees start to give me like that anxiety feeling. Are there more?
No, there are more.
Oh,
there's
good.
a lot more. We're not going to focus on the. We don't have 2 weeks. We just want to kind of keep this one within an hour.
Single episode.
Now, this doesn't mean that PuroClean is a bad investment. It just means that, here are your numbers. But we need to know the franchise is going to require because they get paid first, and then your business gets paid first, and then you get paid. However, they do have a minimum royalty fee.
Okay.
The minimum royalty fee is very complicated, and given that this is a 20-year agreement, very, very risky.
Tell me, spell it out.
Royalty fee, first year, $400. Second year, $1,000 a month, and these are per month.
Oh, per month, okay.
Third year, $1,500 a month. Fourth year, $2,500. Fifth year, $2,500.
So it goes up. Each year you're paying them a minimum royalty fee that is increasing.
That's correct.
So if your business is decreasing, well, too bad.
Too bad. And then it gets absolutely insane from year 6 to year 20. It's your prior year plus CPI adjustment.
Wow.
Consumer Price Index.
Okay.
Do you recall what the CPI number was that was released this past week?
Absolutely no idea.
8.2%?
Okay.
What this means is that for starting in year 6, your royalty goes up with the rate of inflation. What's the rate of inflation going to be in year 14 from now, Allison?
Who knows? Right? Recession, not recession. Like, where are we going? Who knows? 20 years from now, if I could predict that, I would not be doing this podcast. I would have lots of other money.
Exactly.
sources.
If we had that sort of control over time and space, we would not be sitting in a closet in San Antonio, Texas. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
What this means is that as a franchisee buying this, you need to run this calculation.
Yeah, and you need to know how to run this calculation.
And if you have bought this franchise, I want to know. Email me, John T. at FranchiseSkeptics.com. Did your franchise coach or your salesperson, whoever pitched you on this thing, did they sit there and say, here's what your numbers look like with a 3% CPI?
Yeah, the minimum amount that you'll pay us.
Because that's $670,000, Allison, with a 3% CPI. $72,790 a month in minimum royalty payments, $669,000, assuming a 3% CPI. But I went even further.
Oh.
I went even further, Allison. I went ahead and said, what if I bought a PuroClean franchise 20 years ago, using the actual CPI from 20 years ago?
All right.
So I did this, and I would pay $628,000.
All right.
Okay, if I bought this thing in 2001 and ended it in 2021, $600,000. Then I asked, well, what if I bought this thing in one of the worst inflationary periods in American history? Bought my hypothetical in 1963 and ran it all the way to 1982. $900,000. That is a $250,000 swing,
Just simply depending on how the economy goes over 20 years.
just depending upon when you bought this thing.
Right.
That's all that mattered.
Right.
That's the only thing that mattered in these two hypotheticals is when you bought the stupid
Right.
thing. If you bought it in 2001, you only paid $620,000 in minimum royalty fees. If you bought this thing in 1963, you can almost pay close to $1 million.
Right. And again, we don't have a crystal ball, so neither do you, I would assume.
Neither do you.
And yours could have a huge variation.
That's right. We could hit into like Germany, 1923 hyperinflation numbers.
Please, no.
Okay, knock on wood.
I know, I'm like-
I am hitting my head right now, knocking on wood.
But I mean, the reality is we just don't know.
That's why that 20 years is a big risk because of the CPI number. You're making a big bet that minimum royalty payment is not being based upon a 22% CPI.
That the status quo will just stay the same.
Status quo will stay the same.
Right.
And
that's just one fee.
that's just one fee.
So tell me, what
But
are some of the other...
that's the worst. That's the worst one. Some of the
Okay.
other ones, advertising fee, you have an advertising fee of 4%.
Okay.
You have your typical late fees. You have the technology fee, $500 a month. Remember, that's how you connect that to your service.
Right.
As I want to talk about rebates.
I know what rebates are, like in the context of buying things, I turn it back in, I get a rebate.
You love that.
Right.
Right. That way you can get your Amazon Prime subscription for $8 instead
Right,
of $75.
exactly.
Right.
Your
You
cell
get that
phone
rebate.
automatically $100
Cell
off or
phone,
whatever.
$100 off. So rebates generally are fine when they're offered to the end consumer.
Right.
It's when they are intercompany that you can have big problems because you end up with anti-competitive issues. It's a historical lesson. I'm going to be boring here. Rebates were actually what got John Rockefeller in trouble and caused Standard Oil to be broken up in 1911.
I was not aware of that.
Most people are not, but here I am to tell you all this fascinating information. Regardless, as I said, as consumers, we like rebates where you get paid to use a specific product or service. However, PuroClean, they receive rebates from products they force their franchisees to purchase.
Wow.
So let me give you an example. And again, this is disclosed.
Of
All
course
you have to do
so.
is look at it.
Yeah.
Their van. Remember, you have to buy a van.
Yes, and you have to buy the one that they say.
There's a $500 rebate that they get for every van.
So they get it, you don't get it?
They get it.
Oh.
So what do you think that does to the cost of the van?
I mean, it essentially raises it for them.
For $500. So you think that a franchisee who's spending $207,000, you think you might be able to use that $500?
I would assume it would come in handy.
Well, he's not going to get it because PuroClean effectively raised the price of the van by $500 by telling the people who are supplying the van, you supply us the vans, but you have to charge an extra $500 and you pass that through to us.
I cannot even believe that.
That's what they do.
How is that even okay?
It's disclosed, Allison.
Oh, yes, yes,
I
yes.
keep telling you that. They disclose it. And if you disclose it, you can do whatever.
Whatever you want,
And
yeah.
just hope that nobody reads it. So $500. Again, if the cost of the van was actually $62,500, you would be charged $63,000 so that PuroClean gets that extra $500 for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that they want it. Now, I've read a lot of these documents,
Right.
and I know of very few franchisors who are this blatant in their greed. It's a shitty practice, and shame on PuroClean for doing this. How dare they?
I literally sit here feeling shocked that they do this and that they literally just tell you. I mean, yeah, hey, we do it.
They make a significant amount of money here. 311 franchisees, and they disclose that they get $2,160 from every franchise unit because of these rebates. And these rebates are on their payroll, it's on the van, it's on the various systems that they force you to use. $2,160 times 311 Means that Pure Systems, PuroClean get $670,000
Just in rebates.
just in rebates from telling their suppliers, charge our franchisees more and give that money to us.
Wow.
Screw these guys.
Wow.
God, no wonder I hate them.
Who do you sell to then? Okay, we know about all these fees, we know all this stuff, but now who do you sell to as a PuroClean business?
Well, remember how Fetch said that we're going to judge this by homes and
Right.
not dogs?
Yes.
Well, PuroClean does the same thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the productive office location, I'm quoting from the franchise disclosure agreement. The productive office location is a specific agreed upon area identified in your franchise agreement containing a population generally of up to
Oh man,
100,000
that's
people.
generally already they're kind of just screwing you, right?
Yeah.
Generally.
Generally. Now, they mentioned that there's a protected halo of 150,000. Very few franchisees offer that, but that's just up to their
So is
discretion.
this like 100,000 people who own homes in floodplains, or just like 100,000?
Just 100,000 people.
Oh.
And again, it's going to be zip code, demographic based. You know, it might
Okay.
be, you go all the way up to 1604, all the way east of Bandera,
Okay.
like you're delivering pizzas.
Okay, but I'm going to go back. So we're talking about population, but aren't we servicing homes?
We are servicing homes.
Uh,
We are servicing homes. And there's about 2.5 people per home.
okay.
What
Yeah.
does that come to?
40,000.
40,000.
homes. Yeah.
Good math, good math.
Thanks.
You know, that's 40,000 homes. That's going to be good business if you're living in New Orleans.
Right. Assumably somewhere that has a lot of problems.
Exactly. If you're living in dry ass San Antonio or, El Paso,
So they're literally the feast or famine, the flood or drought. I mean,
you have to hope for bad pipes.
ugh, ouch. So then that's my next question. How much does PureClean pull in?
Well, PureClean does disclose this. And thank God for that.
Good.
Their average revenues, $900,000. Their median revenues are $547,000. That's quite a spread.
That is a pretty big spread, which tells me that they have someone really skewing their average.
They're-
But at least they do provide us the median, right?
They do. They do. There is one store, they do disclose this, that makes $9.9 million.
Wow.
I have no idea.
I was going to say, can we know where that is? Maybe I'm going to
don't-
start one there.
They don't disclose that one, but I have a feeling that guy probably owns more than one.
Oh,
So
that
you can
makes
go
sense.
through your list and find those who own more than one and ask them, are you the $10 million store?
Yeah, that makes
So we look at this, and again, your median PureClean's $547,000, just round that up to $550,000. I'm going to do the same formula that I always do. Just median revenues, less those franchise royalty payments. And so let's go ahead and do this. So you got $547,000.
That's
You
the median revenue, right?
Take out those franchise royalty payments. You're going to have $470,000 left to pay the business and yourself. So
Okay.
you're losing about $80,000 in royalty payments.
Okay, and so then how much then do I get?
What do you get? Well, obviously,
Again.
if you're living in New Orleans, you're going to do a lot better than in El Paso. But remember, your initial investment to start this franchise is $230,000. So we're going to do that thing where we compare this against the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
We like to do that.
I'm not going to go run through the formula, but effectively, Dow Jones Industrial has increased 9.9%, 10% a year over the past 20 years, since
Yes.
1992.
And that's the money you get if you're just sitting on your butt playing video games. You're not
Exactly.
doing any work. You're not
So-
sitting in this office for 40 hours a week.
You're not doing that. We're going to assume that technology fee of $500 a month, we're going to assume that we're putting that every month into your Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Makes sense. Okay.
Okay, maybe you get a second job at Rome's Pizza. Maybe you're delivering
Yeah.
for Uber or something like that. But every month for the next 20 years,
You're adding a 500 more in.
500 more in. So we're going to go ahead, 9.9%, crank out the numbers, add those technology fees, and at the end of it, we come to
Ooh, a nice, cool $2 million.
over $2 million. So over 20 years, that's $90,000 in profits that you need to pull out of your PureClean franchise. Assuming that you can sell the store at the end of 20
Right,
years.
that you're
and
not just taking a huge hit as soon as you close it
correct.
down.
Now,
or
if you
whatever.
can't sell that store, if you
Yeah, then that
lose
goes
that
up.
initial investment, I calculated that out too.
Oh,
So
look
if
at
you lose your initial investment, like I lost my place in the script. So if you lose your initial investment, you need to come out to $102,000 a year.
Okay.
So an additional $11,000, $12,000 more.
Yeah.
You got that 20-year amortization period, right?
Okay, so I understand this, right? If you sell your business, you need less profit per year. But if you don't sell your business and you just lose it all, then you need more profit every year to, essentially make the same amount of money that you would have invested, etc.
That's correct. And to your point earlier, you mentioned that the Dow Jones is a passive one. You're
Right.
working at this, so
Yeah.
you need to make more money. That money is just your profit that you need to make in and above anything that you pay yourself. Here we are looking at a store with $547,000 revenues. You pay $77,000 in fees every year, so it leaves you $471,000 in operating capital.
Okay, so I remember that, right? That $471 is what you have left to run the business, pay your people, and your profit?
Correct. So we're going to do that thing that the savings books tell us we're going to pay ourselves
Pay
first.
ourselves first, okay.
Right? We just figured out that we need to pay ourselves. So remember how much we need to pay ourselves, $102,000 a year, right?
Right.
All right, so now we're sitting here. We have $474,000. We demand $102,000 of profit. So we're just going to take that money out.
Right, that's how, pay ourselves first.
Pay ourselves first. So that leaves us $372,000 to run our franchise location.
Okay, so that's the remaining amount.
You need to take that expected profit out. After you take your expected profit out, what you need to do is make sure that the store can run on the rest, as well as pay yourself if you are actually operating the store.
That doesn't sound like a lot, and especially location-based, that could be more difficult in some places than others. Plus, if I'm working as hard as I am sucking people's dog crap out of their basement, I need to be making some money here.
You're working at the business. Your total payout, to your point, should be much higher, especially given that you need to be full-time at this. So if you expect the franchise to pay your salary and provide you with a better than index fund profit margin, then the numbers have to change.
Right.
Let's look at this. You want to pay yourself $100,000 as a franchise owner, and you still need that $102,000 in profit.
Right.
Because you're sucking water out. You got to get paid for that.
Yes.
And that can't just be profit money because you left your job to do this.
You still have to be paying bills.
And you would be making $102,000 if you left that money into your Dow Jones average and just put that $500. $554,000. PuroClean takes your $74,000, leaving you $470,000. If you pay yourself $100,000,
right,
then that means you have $370,000.
Okay.
You still need your $102,000 profit, so that leaves you $268,000 with which to operate your business that needs to generate $554,000 in revenue. So effectively, for every dollar that you spend on the business and not on yourself, has to generate $2 in revenue.
Okay.
Can PuroClean do that? I don't know.
I mean, and that's something you need to know to evaluate for yourself and the location that you intend to start, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of variables that play in here.
And for this one, but we know for PuroClean, $550,000. Here's what we're getting paid. Here's what we should expect in the minimum profit margin. Here's what's left over to run the business. Can we do that? That's the question that the franchisor. That's the way you need to think about. Not like, okay, well, how much am I going to have left over to pay myself? You pay yourself first as a capitalist.
Right.
It's not called workism. it's called capitalism.
Right.
Okay?
It's not called leftovers.
It's not called leftovers. Oh, I love that. Okay.
All right.
Not called leftover. It's called capitalism. So you take your capital out first. I want $100,000 in profit. That gives me $300,000 to pay this thing. I want to pay myself $100,000 on top of my profit. That gives me $270,000 to run the store. Can I do it? Well, you better.
Yeah, I mean, you have to for 20 years.
You have to.
So then tell me, how many people have actually bought into this?
Right now, PuroClean has 311 franchises at the end of 2021, up from 229 and started 2019.
Wow.
They have
They have
grown.
a pretty consistent growth each year,
They
year
do.
over year.
They do. If I look down at their franchisees, at their actual franchise sales, they sold 37 in 2019, 39 in 2020, and 51 in 2021.
All right.
They've had a few close on them. They had 6, 4, and 3 close. They've had some companies taken over, franchises taken over, ceased operations. Yeah, ceased operations.
Okay. And more
8,
of those.
10, and 12. Yeah, a little bit more of those. So they are churning.
Yeah.
They are losing franchisees. They are gaining them.
That seems like a high number that are
Yeah,
ceasing to exist, essentially.
It does. It is a high
And
number.
I will tell you, this doesn't tell us if those had been in business for 2 years or 19. We don't know.
They don't. One thing I'm interested in is I'm going to go down right now. I'm looking at the litigation. Do these people get involved in a lot of lawsuits?
So some pending
Let's see,
action.
pending action. And we brought this action against our former franchisee, Pure Assistance versus William and Bonnie Savage, Pure Assistance versus John Burke.
So they're suing their franchisees.
Yeah, they're suing their franchisees on that one. We brought this action against our former franchisee, John Burke, to recover over $1.5 million in damages based upon Mr. Burke's failure to pay royalties and other fees when due and his abandonment of his franchise before the expiration of the term called for in his franchise agreement. The guy got overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just read it here. On his point, he got overwhelmed, too much money. undercapitalized. He's losing everything. He should screw it.
Yeah.
And $1.5 million, they get that because they calculated out the CPI on that minimum payment. They calculated out those royalty fees. They calculated all that stuff. And now they're suing this guy for $1.5 million because maybe he didn't read the full financial disclosure.
I mean, this is 2014. So this is still... And he's countersuing them.
He is countersuing them. Now, is this a... Now, this is a prior action, so it has been... Mr. Burke did agree to pay PuroClean or Pure Systems $250,000 in 2015. Pure Systems, see on this other one, versus William and Bonnie Savage. The Savages lost, and they agreed to pay Pure Systems $180,000. So they got sued for $800,000. They settled for $200,000.
I will say there's actually, considering how long this has been in, there's not that much arbitration going on.
There's not. But remember, this is what they're required to disclose, and so maybe there's something that they're not disclosed, like the shakedowns.
Right.
Like the non-disclosure agreements.
There are still some things that make us both pretty skeptical about them, John. Like
I'm not pretty skeptical at all.
Okay. I was being generous.
No. We don't need
John
to be,
is full on skeptical.
We don't need to be generous on this program. I mean, number one, this is entertainment. We are evaluating their information and offering our opinion on this. A franchisee that offers a 20-year agreement and a minimum royalty fee which increases based upon CPI and then sues his franchises for $1.5 million when they can't come up with that money is a bad agreement. Yeah. A franchise agreement in which the owners own another company and they openly state they're going to compete against you, that is a bad franchise. A franchise which has rebates that purposely has their suppliers overcharge you so they can transfer money back to the franchisor, that's a bad franchise. A franchise like this is just very market dependent, but they're willing to sell to anybody. They're willing to sell this shit to El Paso, Texas. 14 inches of rain every year. I have no idea. It's probably a little bit more than that, but there's not a lot of need for flood remediation service in El Paso, freaking Texas, but they have no problem taking your $200,000, and they have no problem taking that $700,000 in royalty fees and that $30,000 licensing fee, the one that we discussed.
So in case anyone was on the fence about how John felt about this.
Yeah, absolutely. If your idea is to buy a PuroClean, here's where buying a PuroClean makes sense. If you already own a company that does $10 million in revenue, and this is an extension
of what you're doing.
Let's just say you're a big janitorial company and you have tons of clients and you want to expand.
And good relationships with insurance companies and
exactly.
already
and
have
you want to expand, then buy a PuroClean. They have the branding. They can help you with that. They have the training. And me as a business owner, I'm not going to want to be personally involved in training myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to buy this thing. I'm going to put Jake as my general PuroClean manager. He's going to get all the training, and he's going to run my PuroClean division, and my other guys are going to run my other stuff. And it's going to be expensive my general contractor. So.
But if you're Hank and Peggy Hill wanting to invest all of your retirement funds into something like this instead of your index fund, maybe think twice. Maybe use some evaluation of what this looks like in your area.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
What can I say? Definitely good advice. If this is something that you're kind of walking down that path and you don't know what to do, please reach out to us.
Contact us.
We really do want to help you. Our desire is to be beneficial to you so that you know what you're doing.
And it's not just PuroClean. It's the other ones. Serve Pro, Restoration One, 1-800-RESTORE. All of them.
At the very least,
do
buy
the very
the
same
report.
thing for you that I'm doing for PuroClean.
Yeah. At the very least, buy the report. See what we're doing there. And then if you still need additional help, you know where to find us. So that's a lot of good advice, right, about how we're going through this. Tell me, who is next week's?
We're going to run the numbers on Mathnasium.
Oh, I actually am genuinely interested in this one. I was interested in the other ones too. I shouldn't say that. But this one seems like such a unique business model for, again, something that kind of already exists in the tutoring world. I'll be curious to see what this looks like.
It's very fascinating. Obviously, Mathnasium is nothing like PuroClean. Just to give you a little bit of a spoiler. Not going to irritate me. Not going to...
No personal attachment or
reaction.
Not
personal attachment or whatever. But we are going to evaluate it because, to your point, it is the sort of business that attracts people with specific motivations and positive motivations. They want to help people. They want to educate people, et cetera,
and they
et cetera.
likely already have a background in service and helping,
education, math. We're going to run the numbers on Mathnasium to make sure that it, as a business, is a good investment.
Sounds great. Can't wait. That sounds awesome. And we will definitely see all of you next time on the Franchise Skeptics Podcast.
All right. Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.